welcome to the Red Devils Den podcast. So obviously a couple of big things happened since the previous episode. Got a game coming up as well on what's Newcastle versus Manchester United, so that'll be an interesting one. First of all, Ronaldo, urgent. What are your thoughts on that? Because fine, isn't it?
It's absolutely massive. Our boy's coming home, as Sir Alex would say. I remember watching Ronaldo play for us when I was a kid. I never thought I'd get to see it again, and just to have him come back emotionally means a lot. On top of that, he scored 29 goals in Serie A, 5 more than Romelu Lukaku, who Chelsea just paid about £100 million for. He's still one of the best strikers in the world. So it's just going to be a tremendous boost to have him back. We all love Edinson Cavani, but we know that Cavani can't play every game. And this not only gives us someone that Cavani can rotate with, it also gives us an obvious improvement on Cavani. So I think when we were doing our season preview pod, I think I said that my hope was United would be kind of pushing the 80-point barrier. Now, honestly, I'm expecting a full-on title challenge, and I think that Ronaldo can get us there. So I'm just very excited about the signing. I think it's going to make a big difference for us, an extra 5 to 7 points on his own. We saw that in the Ireland match this past international break, where Ireland were 1-0 down. Ronaldo missed a penalty, admittedly, which is why Bruno should still be on them, by the way. But Ronaldo then goes ahead, and in the 86th minute, he scores one header, equalizes it, and then in the 95th minute scores another header and wins the match. And, I think if Ronaldo was on the pitch, maybe we don't draw against Southampton. Maybe we win that match. So we might have 9 points right now. And, those small, fine margins are going to be one thing that he brings. And the other thing is going to be that winning mentality. We talked about it with Rafael Varane, where our dressing room, there's some people who won stuff. Mata's won the Champions League with Chelsea. Matic won the Premier League with them. But broadly speaking, except if we take out like the really old players, right, and just look at the core of the side, Aaron Wan-Bissaka's never won anything. Victor Lindelof joined us in 2017, so I believe he's never won anything with us at least. Harry Maguire's never won anything at the top level. Luke Shaw's won some FA Cups here and there, an FA Cup and League Cup, Europa League with us, but not a lot. Scott McTominay emerged around 2017. I don't think he's won anything. Bruno Fernandes, again, joined us 2 years ago, hasn't won anything with us in that time. Jadon Sancho's a young player. He won the DFB Pokal last season, but again, not like a huge league, Champions League kind of resume. So when you look at our side, it's a lot of younger players, a lot of players who've kind of developed later in their careers and have built themselves up to this point, but aren't known trophy collectors. And I think that's one of the things that let us down in the Europa League final. I think that's also true of the manager, honestly, but I think that's something that kind of, as we expect that right now, Ronaldo and Varane will provide that mentality. And then in 3 to 4 years, maybe that can come from, say, your Wan-Bissaka and Marcus Rashford, right? We expect that to rub off on them. Similarly, I would expect that to rub off and develop onto the manager. So I think it's good for Ollie's development. It's good for the squad's development. It's good for both our present, past, and future. So I'm just over the moon with the signing.
Yeah, good point. I think obviously the goals he brings is the main thing, but I think the mentality as well, which you touched on, the way he's going to rub off on, say, even Ollie, but most of all, the likes of Mason Greenwood probably more than anyone, because he's obviously a young striker. I think he's obviously already learned from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Cavani, and now Ronaldo before the age of 20, which is pretty amazing for his development. Yeah, Daniel, what were your thoughts on the signing?
I think he's going to add a huge amount for us. Like Resurgent was saying, it's just in those big moments he will step up, and that is something that we need to get the team over the line. And then once you've got a trophy under your belt, then everyone has that experience to draw back on. I think once that first trophy is in, we will go on to win quite a few more. But yeah, so Ronaldo and Varane obviously will help us cross that winning line for the first time, and then I think we'll kick on from there. And I think that is that ability to help us cross the winning line is a really valuable thing. You can't really understate that.
Yeah, exactly. been just popped up on my screen. So, what were your thoughts on the signing?
Yeah, so obviously it's a massive signing, right? Our boy's coming home after what is essentially 12 years, and it couldn't have come under any more extraordinary circumstances. I mean, the fact that he was linked to City and he was almost about to go there, from there to in the next 6 to 8 hours, we step in and then we sign him like this, like in the snap of a finger. And so it just goes to show that if we really want to make a signing, we can make it happen in quick time. It's just that we need to have the right motive. The Glazers, not and by we mean the Glazers. The Glazers need to have the right kind of motivation to say, okay, you know what, this sign is going to be beneficial for us. And that's exactly what happened. Jorge Mendes convinced Joel Glazer and also did Ed Woodward by saying that, okay, this is going to work for you commercially, it's going to work for you brilliantly. Think of it like, if I have to speak in NFL terms, think of it like the Tom Brady of the NFL coming to your team and being
Incidentally, also
cherry on
another
top of the cake.
Glazer-owned team with Tampa Bay, another
Precisely.
Glazer team.
So, and again, for me, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the pitch that Jorge Mendes
It was, from what
made
I've read,
to Joel Glazer, which convinced him. Yeah, exactly. And so those are the reports that have been coming out. I think they came out last week. And so I'm not surprised that they got convinced by it and they decided to break the bank, open the vault, and make the deal happen with Juventus. And so again, like everyone said, I agree with the points made. You know, from a mentality perspective, he brings a lot off the pitch, not just on the pitch. Obviously, he's a lethal goal scorer. We've just seen it in the international friendly against Ireland. So we definitely know that he's got the ability inside the box, but not just that, off the pitch as well. The kind of standards that he raises when he walks onto the training ground, you know, the kind of aura or the presence that he establishes when he's in the dressing room, I think that is gonna, you know, have an effect on everyone else who will look to up their game and just to show them that, you know what, I am worthy of being in the squad and I'm worthy of playing alongside you. So that's just going to lift the entire morale, and also it gives Ole Gunnar Solskjaer an extra option to play with for his in-game management. So yeah, looking forward to it.
One thing I will add is when it comes to people saying, oh, why can't we go this fast with every transfer? The reason for that is this is completely different to every transfer. When we signed Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Raphael Varane, Harry Maguire, doesn't go down the list of players. The scouting department is given, okay, we need this kind of player. They then compile a list, trim it down to 10 players. Then they go and watch those 10 players, come back, draw it down again. They work with Ollie, and then Ollie and I guess it would be John Murtaugh now and Ed Woodward possibly would sit down and kind of rank them 1, 2, and 3, and they set financial parameters that every deal could be done in. And then they have the whole window, because they've planned this in advance, to go ahead and try to work their way down 1, 2, and 3 on that list. The difference here is there was no 1, 2, and 3. It was Ronaldo or nothing. There was no scouting department involved. There was no list. There was no video to watch. It was just, hey, we can get Ronaldo. Can we do it? Yes. Okay, let's sign him. And when it comes to negotiations, they couldn't even drag that out, because usually United enter the summer and say, okay, we've got 3 months to finish our business. And in this particular case, they had 48 hours. So and Man City were already further along in the process by the time we got there. So it was just a very unique situation. I wouldn't expect this speed to be reprised again. It's just the unique factor surrounding this particular signing, that there was he wanted to come here. There were 48 hours to do a deal. Juventus had accepted he was leaving. There was no other targets to consider. So between all of them, very simple deal to conclude.
Well, I have a question for the three of you. Do you really think that Man City were going to get him, or do you think was it a whole ruse sort of engineered by Mendes?
I don't see why both of those things can't be true at the same time. I think Jorge Mendes and Ronaldo were always hoping that United would stop it and would come in and prevent that deal from going through. But I do think Man City thought they were going to sign him. I do think that Juventus knew he was leaving. And I do think, honestly, and this is going to hurt some United fans' feelings, but I said this on the last pod in an edited out portion, and I'm going to say it again because I still think this holds true. Ronaldo is mainly focused on Ronaldo. His history at the club is secondary to him. And I honestly think if we hadn't come in for him, he would have gone to Man City. He would not have cared about the history enough to not go. So I do believe that deal would have happened if we hadn't intervened. But I do think Mendes and Ronaldo always hoped we would intervene.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. One question I had was, well, there's sort of been a lot of criticism about the signing that he'll take minutes off the likes of Greenwood, Rashford or Sancho, whatever, even Cavani. But obviously, we're not concerned about his development. But do you think that's a problem? Because I think the influence and the goals he'll bring personally, I think they'll make up for it. And I still think Greenwood and the others will get a lot of games. But do you guys think that's a problem?
This sounds like a question for development, Dan.
I don't think it is personally. I think Greenwood's development is still in that stage where he's playing some minutes on the right, some minutes through the middle. So I don't think it's any problem. So I think he can quite happily fill in on the right for the rest of the season, mostly as that is. And then you've got the whole benefits of him learning from Ronaldo. In so many ways, his mentality, how he trains, his movement, his heading ability. I think there's a lot more benefits than slightly reducing our players' minutes. I think that, like you said, the positive factors make up for it.
Do you think that we're going to see Greenwood at 9 or Martial at 9 the rest of the season now with Ronaldo and Cavani there?
I can't see it happening very often because like you've got those two, they really need to play there. Cavani certainly is not going to play anywhere else. Ollie's already said Ronaldo's going to play as a striker, so I wouldn't be surprised if Greenwood almost exclusively plays on the right, and then Martial on the left. So yeah, I don't see where we're going to find the time to be able to play other players through the middle when you have those two who need to play. But then at the end, given Cavani's going in the summer, that then opens up Greenwood, that if Ollie wants him to properly become centred around through the middle of the pitch. So yeah, I don't think there's too much of an issue this season.
Given that most of us think Martial will move on next summer, that means that probably we've seen Anthony Martial play as a striker for United for the last time. That's both an emotional moment and also a beautiful thing.
I feel like his role for the rest of the season will probably just be exclusively left wing, and then when Rashford comes back, he'll then move to Rashford's backup. So yeah, I think, like you say, I think he's going to move on next summer because he won't be happy with the game time he's going to get.
See, I'd even play Lingard over Martial at this point because you've got one player who's on really good form in Lingard, and you've got one that's struggling in Martial. And I think obviously Lingard's best position is probably number 10 as sort of a second striker, but I think he can be pretty effective on the wing as well. So whether it's on the right or especially on the left. But yeah, anyone else got anything to say on Ronaldo? No. Okay, so
This is there to be said. There's nothing else to be said.
Yeah, I think we all agree it's amazing signing. But yeah, in terms of Dan James, he's obviously left the club for Leeds. I've got my Wales top on, playing later at the time of recording. But yeah, I'll give my opinion. But first of all, Daniel, what were your thoughts on it?
From a personal perspective, he's just kind of a player that I really taken to. He's one of my favourite players in the squad. So I was really quite upset that he left. But you can completely understand it that we have more talented players. We have that he wanted to go to get minutes because he would have just sat on our bench otherwise and never played, and he wasn't content with that. So you have to respect that he wanted to play. He's not there for the money. He wants to play football, and you have to respect that. So yeah, I can definitely understand it, but I will, from a personal perspective, miss him, even if we have the players where we won't miss him on the pitch.
Yeah, I think his work rate was probably his biggest sort of asset. I will miss that at times, but yeah, I think it's probably the right decision to let him go, because we were mainly playing him on the right, and he's not a right winger at all. Some wingers can play both. Quite a few can play both, but I think he's one of them. I think on the left he's really effective. Yeah, he just wasn't playing there, so it's disappointing. Probably going to put in another masterclass later against Estonia. I don't know, but yeah, Vim, what were your thoughts on letting Dan James go?
Yeah, I was a bit I was in two minds about it, because on the one hand I can understand, with Ronaldo coming in and obviously Greenwood, Sancho, Rashford coming in back. You also have Fofana and Martial with so many attacking options out there. And Jesse Lingard even staying back. Uh, keeping that in mind, I don't know if Dan James was going to get as many opportunities, as many starts as he would have liked. And so, on the one hand, I can understand why he had to make the move. If he wants to play week in, week out, that's not going to happen at United. But on the other hand, I liked him as a player, and the fact that he seemed as a very good squad player. Whenever he was called upon by Oli as a starter, as a substitute, he did what he was told to do, and he did it pretty well, I would say. The fact that he's got this really good raw pace in him, and the fact that he is amazing at counterattacks, he is the outlet that you want to have. He's one of the outlets you want to have, and so he's going to shine. He's going to do pretty well in that lead scene, as much as I hate to say it. Because given the way Bielsa plays, his pace, his work rate, his intensity is perfect for Bielsa's style of play. And so, while I am disappointed because I liked him as a player, and obviously he's been criticized a bunch of times by so many people on Twitter, on social media, and say, all he does is run and he does nothing else. And yeah, he wasn't the silkiest, or he wasn't the fanciest player that we brought in, but he was a functional player. He had a purpose, and he did that to the dot whenever he was asked to do so. So, yeah, wasn't two minds about it, but can understand why he had to move.
You're muted, Reese, but I know it's my turn, so I'll go ahead. When it comes to Dan James, I wasn't in double minds about it. When I saw that Leeds were offering 10 million more than we had paid for him, the first profit on a signing since Sir Alex Ferguson left the club. The first signing we've actually turned a profit on since the 2010 summer, where we signed Chris Smalling and Chicharito, I think it was, who we turned profits on in the following decade. So it was great for me to see the club making those financially smart decisions. On top of that, I don't personally see Dan James as more than a bottom half of the Premier League type player, a Theo Walcott, an Aaron Lennon, something like that. So I think it's the right decision for him to go. I think Leeds is probably the right level of club for him. I think Marcelo Bielsa is one of the best technical coaches in the world, and I mocked some of his finishing on the last podcast. I do think that Bielsa will improve that end product more than most managers can. And this was the right move for Dan James, as much as United fans don't like our players going to Leeds. And I wish him the best of luck and Leeds the worst of luck, if that makes sense. Having said that, I do want to just reflect on my favorite Dan James moment, which is actually his debut. When he scored at Old Trafford, the fourth goal against Chelsea in the 4-0 win over Frank Lampard's team. And the reason why it stands out to me as one of my favorite goals, actually not just for Dan James, but broadly speaking, is he had lost his dad. He had moved to United. There's a whole summer of this big energy and emotion from him. And then his celebration, the way that he just kind of let it all out, you could see the catharsis going through him. And so for me, that always stands out to me as like a very memorable moment. And it kind of also reflects on his character that he's a very hardworking player. He doesn't complain off the pitch, no matter what's happening, whether it's in his personal life or he's not playing. He does his talking on the pitch, and you can think about his play whatever you want. But unlike, say, Jesse Lingard or Donny van de Beek or many other players that have come through the door at United, it's not just them two. You could look at Angel Di Maria when he was here. Players tend to complain that, oh, I'm not getting game time when they're not. And then Dan James has never once complained that he wasn't playing. He always took his minutes respectfully where they were offered to him. And so ultimately, while I don't think he was ever good enough for United, I think it was a worthwhile signing to make financially. And also, it was just, he's a good character, and I wish him the best of luck.
One more thing to add there, that I do think this signing was very much a successful one in terms of we signed a player who helped us in the early stages of our rebuild. We made progress with him. He contributed. He was brilliant in our big games. So and then we even turned over a profit on him. So yeah, I don't think you could ask for much more from what was he, £15 million we signed him for. I'd call that a pretty successful signing. So yeah, while it's the right time for him to move on, I'd call that signing a success.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that stands out to me is if we look at the reports from David Ornstein back in 2019, we know that Ollie wanted Jadon Sancho back then. So you can almost look at him as a stopgap for 2 years until we signed Sancho, who was the original target on the wing. And then as part of that process, we also made £10 million on him. So, I mean, it's hard to complain at that. Also, if you look at it, actually, he had, I think, 3 goals and 6 assists in his first season. And United made the top 4 by, I think, 3 or 4 points with that last day win over Leicester. So arguably, if we didn't get Dan James and just had nobody, you could make a case that we might have ended up in the Europa League at the end of that season without his assists. And without, I think the only goal that he scored that year that got us points directly was the draw at Southampton, I think in the second match of the season. But, that's 1 point, maybe his assist gets us a point or 3 points somewhere else. And, we can thank Dan James for getting us into the Champions League in that season partially. And like you said, it's a successful signing, and best of luck to him.
Yeah, for sure. So two sort of other transfer stories. First of all, Van de Beek, his agent come out and had a few things to say, including that he was close to a loan deal to Everton on deadline day. So, Vin, what are your thoughts on him overall? Do you think he has a future at the club, or is he sort of probably going to leave?
Yeah, well, I've been saying this for the longest time that Donny van de Beek is going to play an important role this season. I've been saying this since last season. Everyone was complaining and bickering about, oh, he's not getting game time, he's not going to play, Ollie doesn't fancy him, or he wasn't Ollie signing, this and that. And I just told them one simple thing. Look at Hakim Ziyech. He came from the Dutch league, was thrown in straight away, and after a few games, he sort of stalled. He was getting injured, he was out of form, in and out. He, like a couple of other players from the Dutch and the German leagues, were taking time to adapt to the intensity and the sort of tempo of the Premier League, which is pretty high compared to other leagues in the world, as admitted by those players themselves. And the same was the case for Donny. And Ollie did the smart thing of not just throwing him in straight away, and rather giving him time to catch up to the intensity and tempo and sort of work on himself physically, which you can see the difference now, so that he can adapt himself to the league a lot more easily, and he can apply himself in match situations as smoothly as possible. And that's exactly what last season was about, which is why he wasn't starting that many Premier League games, although he did make 29 appearances in total, which is not too bad. This season, as you can see, he's grown physically. Obviously, I don't know if you all saw his interview with Rio Ferdinand and Stephen Howson, where he himself talks about the fact that the intensity of the Premier League is what surprised him, and the fact that he had last season to sort of observe and get used to it and understand and work on himself, so that he can get to play in the team either as a 10 or as an 8 or as a 6. He mentioned those 3 positions. Again, I don't think, again, on Twitter, many people are saying, he's crossed the line and he said a lot of things he shouldn't have. I don't think he said anything inappropriately, in my opinion. His agent did, I agree. His agent went on to bicker about just everything. But again, he was speaking on Dutch TV, so probably makes sense why he wouldn't have said these things if it was Sky or BT or anyone else. As for Donny, again, I don't think he said anything inappropriately. I think he came across it as professionally as he could have without, damaging the reputation of the manager, himself, or the club. But yeah, I do expect him to see now that the game's going to kick in, the Champions League, the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, now that those games are going to come in, the schedule's going to be hectic. All he's going to have to use is squad, and Van der Beek is going to play a big role.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it's going to be interesting because I think the plan was, last season he would play pretty much the same amount as he did. You'd just be a backup to Bruno Fernandes, and he'd play in the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, a few games in the Champions League. Obviously, then we went into the Europa League, and that's what he did. But I think the plan was that Pogba would probably leave. Not that the club necessarily wanted him to leave, but they expected him to. I think Ollie probably said to him when he signed, Pogba will probably leave. So then, we'll probably switch to a 4-3-3, and you'll probably get a lot more minutes. But yeah, he didn't leave, and his agent said not happy with being a Carabao Cup player, an FA Cup player, or a player who just plays in Europe. He wants to play regularly in the Premier League. Isn't going to happen when Paul Pogba's at the club, in my opinion. But yeah, Daniel, what were your thoughts?
So I think Donny didn't say anything wrong. I think his interview was perfectly respectful. It was fine. I think his agent, though, is kind of treading the fine line of what's acceptable, what's not. I think his earlier interviews where he was just kind of saying the same thing Donny did, but he was frustrated at his game time. He wanted to play more. You kind of understand those. But I think you're getting into kind of dangerous territory in the later interview where he was probably talking about the behind the scenes going on with the manager, like what things, private financial talks, you know what I mean, where he was just like transfer related things that you don't make public, that should be private. So yeah, I think his agent slightly went a bit far with his comments. Hopefully though, that because he kind of alluded to the fact they have an understanding between Ollie and Donny that he's going to play more, hopefully his agent will now stop speaking out and the situation will be resolved. In terms of on the pitch, I do feel like while beforehand he really needed to play as a number 10 as Bruno's backup, I do feel like the club are trying to get him more comfortable playing as an 8. They've got him working on his physicality, he's bulking up. And I also, in the couple of games, what was it, at the end of last season where he played as an 8, you can see there's a big difference between how he played it and in the earlier games. So in the earlier games, he was just getting forward at will, leaving our midfield just with the one player who was getting overwhelmed. He did not do that again at the end of the season against Wolves, though he's a lot more positioning discipline. So I think the club is working with him on becoming more comfortable deeper. And so yeah, I feel like as time goes, as time progresses, he's going to get more game time than just at number 10. I think we're making him more comfortable deeper, which is only going to be a positive thing.
Yeah, 100%. Agent.
Yeah, as most people know, I love Donny van de Beek. I liked him at Ajax. I liked him in the Champions League. I actually wanted us to sign him as early as 2 years ago. So I was really happy when he ended up coming in last summer. I think he's a different style of number 10 to Bruno Fernandes. I think he's more of a Raumdeuter, somebody who makes runs, manipulates space. He's not somebody who's going to create 3, 4, 5 chances a game with his passing. He doesn't do that thing that Bruno Fernandes does where we're on the counter attack and then Bruno just pings a long ball 40 meters up the pitch, hoping that somebody gets on the end of it. He's schooled in the Ajax way. He tends to be careful with his possession. He doesn't want to lose the ball. And I think that's caused issues at times where it's been hard for him to adapt to us and us to adapt to him because we're a very risk-taking team in the final third, and especially when it comes to our chance creation. And Donny was trained not to do that for 20 years at Ajax. But I do think that he's a phenomenal player and he can adapt to our system. I think, as Reece said, and I think this is the most important thing, the plan was always that either last summer or especially this summer, somebody would pay for Paul Pogba. Pogba would leave, Declan Rice would come in, and you'd have a midfield three of Bruno Fernandes, Van de Beek, and Declan Rice. The problem now is nobody bought Paul Pogba. So Pogba is, first of all, as much as I have issues with his work rate at times, not this season, in the past. I think he's been a lot better this year so far. But, I've had issues with his work rate in the past. But regardless of that, he is a better number 8 and a better number 10 in terms of creating chances than Donny van de Beek is. I think Van de Beek's a better goal scorer, but I think, when it comes to adding chances for our forwards, Paul Pogba is better, simply put. So he gets in the team ahead of him there, and there's no proper defensive midfielder basically to hold the thing together, because Donny, left to his natural devices, likes to go forward and find those spaces between the midfield and the strikers and take them up to either pull defenders away or for someone to play a through ball into him so he can go and score. That's not going to happen because we can't vacate that kind of space in our midfield pivot with Matic's 35-year-old legs or Fred running off somewhere to make a tackle. Those players don't enable that. Even Scott McTominay is the best of the bunch, but he's developed very much from a box-to-box mid into a holding midfielder for the sake of the team. He's not somebody who naturally kind of embraced that position. And so I think that it's very important for Donny van de Beek this season to be successful that Ollie has to rotate the team more, simply put, because when it comes to most of our other players, like Jesse Lingard can play at number 10. He can also play on the wing. Juan Mata is the same, even though he's getting slower. He does still play off the right sometimes as a very slow winger for some reason. If you look at Ronaldo, he plays up front and he can play off the left. Mason Greenwood, similar, up front on the right. He can play on the left too. Jadon Sancho can play both wings or in the middle. Bruno Fernandes pretty much exclusively plays 10. Similarly speaking, I think Donny van de Beek is going to exclusively play the number 10 position. And so Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has to rotate his squad better. That's the only way Donny van de Beek is going to be getting any kind of serious minutes this season. Otherwise, it's going to end up with him asking for a transfer in January or the summer. And that'll be a real shame because he's a very talented player. And I think if he plays regularly, we'll see that.
Okay, so just finishing off transfers then. Jesse Lingard was obviously heavily rumoured to be leaving the club, but he didn't. He stayed. So, Daniel, what are your thoughts on that? Would you have ideally sold Lingard? Do you think he could get?
Yes, I would have ideally sold him, and I found it quite frustrating that we didn't. The hold up seemed to be that we were determined to ask for too high asking price that nobody was willing to pay. Like, we had a potential suitor in West Ham, but based on the reports I read, that we seemed to price him out of a move. I'm also a little bit frustrated with Lingard's own personal mindset. So if in the earlier section of this podcast, I talked about how I respected the fact that James left the club in view of playing regularly, because that's what mattered to him the most. He recognised the fact that he wasn't going to get that playing time at United, so decided to leave. While Lingard is a more talented player than James, the situation is essentially the same, where our attacking options are stacked. He's not going to get the game time he wants. And I feel like it's a little frustrating that he didn't push for a move, being content to just sit on the bench, because he's not going to play, and he will know that. And I feel like it's a little bit of a waste of 6 months or a year, depending on if he leaves in January or not, of his career, just sitting on the bench, barely ever playing.
Yeah, I get that, but I think his sort of mindset is that I will get chances, and if I take those chances, Solskjaer has, assured me that I will play. I think he's still got the mindset that if he takes his chances, he'll be okay. But then again, is he really? If Sancho's performing at his best, if Rashford's performing at his best, Bruno van der Beek, I don't think he's going to start ahead of them. So I don't know. Maybe in his mind he sees it differently. The only sort of thing I can say. But Surgeon, what are your thoughts on the situation?
Okay, so Daniel brought this up, and I think a lot of people have brought this up, that United priced him out of a move, which is partly true. that we demanded first 30 million, then 25 million, and West Ham weren't prepared to pay that much, and they decided to go for someone younger in Vlasic. So I understand where that's coming from. But I also want to read something that Laurie Whitwell said on the Talk of the Devils on August 5th. He said, West Ham were interested, but they wouldn't look to do a deal at 30 million. At the moment, it's just club's interest, but no plunge yet. And Lingard also has communicated to Solskjaer he wants to stay. That's important, I think, partly, because if you look at ex-West Ham United employee on Twitter, who's one of the most reliable West Ham ITKs, like he's been more reliable than the papers at times for them. The picture he seems to paint is Lingard early in the window said he wanted to stay. And then probably around the time the season started, changed his mind and was more open to talking with West Ham. And then United still demanded 25 million. Then West Ham go and sign Vlasic instead, and then Lingard ultimately ends up staying here. But I think a big part of the reason why Lingard is here is because Lingard wants to be here. And that to me is a problem because, as Daniel said, with Daniel James, he looked at it, he said, okay, Ronaldo's coming in. There's at least 5 or 6 players ahead of me in the pecking order. I'm not going to get minutes. I'm going to leave. Jesse Lingard went on loan because he wasn't getting minutes. And now we've signed Jadon Sancho and Cristiano Ronaldo and lost Daniel James, and somehow he thinks that he's going to play more minutes than he was before. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's some rumors that Lingard may have talked to West Ham about signing for them on a free next summer. But if that's the case, then wouldn't you go up to United and say, hey, West Ham want to sign me on a free next summer. You guys are asking for 30 million right now. They don't want to pay that. I don't want to sit on the bench for a year. Can we come to some kind of agreement? Because this way you can get some transfer fee for me and I can go play a year earlier. It would be in everyone's best interest. So it's just, I just find Lingard's behavior in this entire process to be confusing. I think he wants to stay because he loves the club, but I think he also wants to stay because it's good for his J-Lings brand. I think he wants to stay because Cristiano Ronaldo's here and he's excited about that, and he wants to train with Ronaldo and hopefully play with Ronaldo a couple of times. And I just think he's behaving the way that he's always presented himself, as an immature man-child. And I think that behavior is ultimately going to hurt his career. It's hurt United's chances of probably getting 10 to 20 million as a transfer fee. And it's going to put pressure on Ollie to play him, because we saw a report yesterday that he's rejected a new contract offer because he wants to see that he's in the manager's first team plans. But if you look at it, where is he supposed to play, right? At number 10, you have Bruno Fernandes, then Donny van de Beek, then it should be Jesse Lingard. Part of me is afraid that Ollie will play Lingard over Van de Beek, but that's another discussion. In my opinion, he should be third choice in the role. Then you look at the wings, and we've got Sancho, Rashford, Greenwood. You could argue that he comes in as fourth choice winger, but you also have Anthony Martial, who has significantly more natural talent, even if Lingard's form is better. You also have the young Anthony Elanga trying to come through. So there's a lot of options there as well. And it just feels like he's not going to play. He knows he's not going to play, and yet he hasn't pushed to leave. And that's always tremendously frustrating.
That's why I kind of tried to cover it from both the clubs and his perspective. I think both sides are a bit at fault here. But yeah, my bigger frustration is with Lingard rather than the club. If anything, he's a little bit lucky that the World Cup isn't this summer. It's in December or something, isn't it? Because if it was this summer and he's essentially writing off at least half of this season, he would have probably lost what was highly likely to be a World Cup place. So yeah, he's throwing away half a season, maybe even a whole season if he ends up leaving on a free, and it's just pointless.
Vim, what were your thoughts on Lingard?
Yeah, well, I've been saying it all summer that he should have gone for his own good, because if he stays in the squad, he's simply not gonna get enough game time. That's my only fear. And look, I love Jesse Lingard, no doubt about that, and I really want him to do well. And I really wish he would have been one of the mainstays at Manchester United, but that's not the case. Instead, he is going to be, I would say, fifth, sixth choice, when it comes to picking a start 11. He's not going to be your first, second, or even third choice in any of the positions that he plays in, which is either as a 10 or in either of the wings. He's not going to be your first choice. He's probably not going to be a second choice either, because you've got so many players already stacked in those options. And you also have the likes of Anthony Langa, who's also waiting in the wings. And I feel that Ollie is going to introduce him to a certain extent in some of the, not so important games, I would say, like against maybe young boys or something like that. Again, which then begs the question, why did Lingard even want to stay? Was it because we priced him out of a move, like you said, to an extent? But also, on the other hand, I feel that West Ham could have easily paid 22, 25 million for a player who was really good for them on their loan spell. If they can go out and spend 30 million on Kurt Zuma and they can go out and spend 20 million on Vlasic, then they can certainly spend 25 million on Jesse Lingard, who is PL experienced, Premier League proven, and he played 6 months for you, literally, and he really propelled you up the table. And he was one of the reasons why they actually got into Europa League.
I don't think it's reasonable to expect.
Argue.
I don't think it's reasonable to expect West Ham to pay 25-30 million for Lingard when you look at Joe Willock, who left Arsenal for Newcastle and had a similar impact on loan. He scored 7-8 goals, something like that in the Premier League. Lingard got 9, so it was pretty close. And Willock is, I think, 7 or 8 years younger than Lingard, and he joined Newcastle on a permanent deal for 24 million. So if someone who's 8 years younger is going for 24 million, I think West Ham are right to expect that Lingard should be significantly cheaper, probably in that 15 to 20 million range. I don't think the price tag that we put on him was fair, but equally, as we've talked about, he's not first choice or second choice. So what is he doing here?
Exactly right. And again, we just came across sports yesterday or a couple of days ago saying that Lingard has rejected a new contract at United, and it looks like that he's going to wait till January when he can pre-negotiate with other clubs. So it seems like he wants to ensure game time for himself, but he does not want a new contract at United so that we can make a sale of him. So again, it's in two minds, really. I want him to get game time, and I want him to, I want the situation to be dealt with respectfully and as smoothly as possible. At the same time, I felt that he should have gone this summer. So, yeah, let's see how things go.
Yeah, I think what will happen is he probably won't play too much, and he'll probably not be too happy with that, and then he'll probably leave on a free to West Ham or some other Premier League club.
That's the disappointing thing, though, because if you look at it now, United have 5 contracts expiring next summer for first-team players. Lee Grant and Juan Mata, fine, they don't really play that much. But then you've got Cavani, Lingard, and Pogba, who are all going to potentially leave on a free. We'd have to replace Cavani. We would have to replace Pogba. And then Lingard, if you look at him as a 6th choice midfielder, is someone we'd have to replace. But even if we don't have to replace him, that's 15, 20 million in fees we could have got this summer and potentially signed a Saul Niguez or a Ruben Neves that we didn't get to do because Jesse Lingard decided he wanted to stay. And it's not good for the club. It's not good for him. It's not good for West Ham. It just feels like it's a lose-lose situation for everybody, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah, exactly.
Genuine question, though. How much would you have taken him? Because I would have taken him 20 million. I would have held him out for 20 million at least. Or at most, I would say 20 million.
When a player is going to leave on a free in a year, you don't think you should offer him a new contract, or at least most of the fans don't think we should offer him a new contract. And also, you're in a situation where he's not going to play for you, so there's no real benefit in keeping him around. I think you take whatever's on the table. You negotiate it as much as you can. But say West Ham wanted to go something really low, 12 million. Would you rather have 12 million and Jesse Lingard doesn't play 4 matches this season? Or would you rather have 4 matches of Jesse Lingard and lose the 12 million. It doesn't make sense, right? You would take the money. And so I think ultimately in the situation we were in, I think you take what's on the table.
Also, even if I don't think this situation was the case, but it's just another example. Even if West Ham's finances were tight, you could do the suggestion that was reported by a few places of a potential like 1 year extension and then a loan plus obligation. There are ways around it where you don't have to do the mistake of giving him like a massive 4-year deal or something. There are ways to get the deal done where we're not left with him leaving on a free.
Really interesting and points that make sense as well. But yeah, we didn't get a chance to talk about the Wolverhampton Wanderers game, so we'll just talk about that for 5 minutes. So, Vin, what were your thoughts on that? Obviously, 1-0 to United wasn't the best performance. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, like you said, not the best performance, but we got the result at the end, 3 points. I think that ultimately that's what matters. You could argue given the fact that it's just the third game of the season, we're still getting into a groove, and the fact that we have an international break doesn't really help the team to an extent, because once you start getting to the groove of playing games every week, you want to keep that momentum going, and it sort of brings a halt to that. But coming back to the Wolves game, yeah, like you said, it wasn't the best performances. The first half, I think, just wasn't good enough. We were literally being dominated by Wolves in that midfield. Adama Traore was causing a nuisance to not just our midfield, but also to our backline. Aaron Bissaka came out with, I would say, the most crucial save that he has probably made so far in his Manchester United career. And because, again, that was a very, very good clearance. He realized that there was a shot that was going to be on target, and he quickly just slid in and just made sure that the ball cleared away on time. Because if you look at the other defenders, Maguire, they were tracking their own men. I think Maguire was tracking Jimenez, and Varane was trying to track. I think it wasn't Traore, but I think it was Coutinho or someone. I'm not sure. One of the new signings. I'm not sure who it was. So again, neither of them could really come out of the position, and so Aaron Saka had to do that job. David De Gea showed why he can still be the best goalkeeper in the world, which was, again, it was a vintage performance from him. That double save was just a classic flashback to 2018, 2017, when he used to do that week in, week out, literally. And so, yeah, the performance wasn't good. Fred had a bad day. He was pressured too much, and Adama beat him a couple of times. And ultimately, Greenwood got the goal, which, again, he's performing at a ridiculously high, he's outperforming his XG to massive levels. He's got 3 goals in 3 games. Obviously, there's going to be a slump in form. So before people start going off on him, just want to remind you that is bound to happen. Remember, he's still 19. He's going to go through some rough patches where he may not be scoring goals. He may not have amazing games that he's been having right now. So just got to be patient with him. But on the whole, I think this was a game where we had to grind out. Wolves away at the Molineux hasn't always been easy for us. And this is a different Wolves side we're playing. Normally against the Wolves of Nuno, they would be defensive and they'd play as a 3-5-2. And, we'd really have to take ourselves and be as creative as we can. But this Wolves was different. This Wolves was a lot more attacking. They wanted to score goals. They were a lot more, you could say, proactive in terms of being on the ball. And it took us a while to, get around and sort of open them up eventually, which in second half we did to an extent. But again, we got the goal. That's what matters. Grinding it out. That's what champions are made of.
Yeah, for sure. Couldn't say it better myself. I think There were a couple of good performances, but I think the biggest problem was probably Fred and Pogba in the midfield. I think especially with Adama, and there was a couple of other players who were playing 1v1 a lot. Fred and Pogba just could not deal with him. Every time he got 1v1 with Fred, he just destroyed him, and Pogba as well. We know he's not that disciplined defensively, but you sort of expect more from Fred because he is supposed to be disciplined defensively. He's good at making the odd tackle and really good at intercepting. Whereas I think Vince said he's not in the best form. I think from now on, especially if we're going up against players like Adama, we need McTominay or something. But obviously, he would have played, but he was obviously injured. Sergio, what were your sort of overall thoughts on the game?
So I want to start out just by praising some players individually. Mason Greenwood, 3 goals in 3 games. His XG shows it's not sustainable, but long may it continue. And he's coming up in big moments for us, so that's always great to see from a young player, especially. David De Gea, fantastic. That double save off of the corner, in particular, stood out to me. We're starting to see some shades of David De Gea from the 2017-18 season, or even the kind of before that time period where he was kind of starting to get to his peak after 3 down seasons. So it's really nice to see that. Rafael Varane was fantastic at the back. Aaron Wan-Bissaka with a great slide tackle that was as good as a goal at the other end. So just a lot of great individual contributions. Same problems in midfield that have already been discussed with Pogba and Fred. I don't think it's worth me going over them again. What I will say is that was the kind of performance that we hope not to have too many times this season. And the result ultimately is going to be looked back upon depending on how the next 4 or 5 games go. Because if you have, between now and the international break, I think we have 4 Premier League matches. If we go and win 3 of them, then you're looking back into the next international break saying, oh, okay, United didn't play well, but they won. That's the performance of champions. They're title challengers. On the other hand, if we go in the next 4 matches and draw 3 of them and win 1, I don't know, something like that, or win 2, lose 2, whatever, right? 6, 7 points, something along those lines. If we end up in that kind of situation, then you look back at it and say, oh, well, the performance wasn't good and United stole the points and it was a sign that, they weren't playing very well. And then we saw that kind of manifest itself in the later matches. So I think this is one where context is ultimately going to define that performance. If we end up either in a title challenge or winning the trophy in May, we're going to look back on that match at Wolves as the first time United displayed that kind of grit of champions. And that'll be fantastic to see, and I'm hoping that's the case.
Yeah, obviously most things have been discussed, but was there anything Daniel wanted to sort of point out?
Yeah, so not repeating the same stuff, just trying to add something different. I think one thing that really stood out to me was Aaron Wan-Bissaka's back post defending. So that has been a problem for him pretty much since he's joined. But there was one situation in the game where he carried out some brilliant back post defending, and it's just like, wow, we're not accustomed to seeing that from him. One game isn't enough of a sample size to say, oh, he's fixed the problem, but it's just, you've got to start somewhere. So hopefully that is a good sign going forward that maybe this issue is being addressed, it's being worked on, and hopefully it won't be an issue going forward.
I think Varane will help with that as well.
One thing I'll say, sorry, just on the set piece defending, it's only been 3 matches. It's early to kind of make predictions, but last season United conceded 14 goals in 38 matches off of set pieces. This year we haven't really gone close to conceding on a set piece other than once or twice. That De Gea double save obviously stands out, but if we look at it, the average last season was United conceded on a set piece every 2.7 matches. So the fact that we've gone 3 and haven't given up a goal on a set piece does give you some optimism. I mean, obviously we could concede 1 in the next one and then it doesn't look as good anymore. But, for me, at least, I think we've been a lot better on set pieces, both defending and attacking them in the first 3 matches this season. And I think Eric Ramsey's doing good work, and we'll continue to see that manifest as things go forward.
I think as a fan in past seasons, when you watch the set pieces, it's incredibly hard not to be nervous watching them. You're worried, are we going to concede constantly when we concede set pieces? And that worry just hasn't been there in the last few games. We just the setup, the defending just inspires with a lot more confidence that I'm not constantly worried, oh, we've conceded a set piece, are we going to concede now? I'm definitely a lot less worried about it than I was.
I'm not particularly religious, but there were times last season where the opposition would get a corner kick and I would start praying immediately until the ball was out of the box. And I think at least this season I'm not doing that, as Dennis said. So it's been a nice change to see, and long may it continue.
Yeah, kudos to Eric Ramsey. Clearly, he seems to have an impact on the way we play defend and attack set pieces. And also, when you have two towers in Harry Maguire and Rafael Varane in the box, it doesn't make the attacker's job that much easier, or the defender's job in case of corners. So I think those two factors combining together have done us good for the first 3 games. And yeah, long may it prosper.
Yeah, I think the sample size is really small. Personally, I am still a bit worried when we concede a set piece. But I don't think really, with the amount of time Ramsey has had to work with the players, I think he's going to need a little bit more to really get his work across. And as your surgeon said, I think we probably would have conceded from a set piece in that Wolves game if it wasn't for David Pea's save. So I think we're going to have to be a little bit patient. But yeah,
I haven't seen it, and I'd love to see. I don't know where to find it. Maybe it's out there somewhere, and I'll run into it one day. But I think one of the big things that stood out to me on our corners and free kicks is United have gotten the first head to the ball more frequently, it feels like to me, than in past 2 seasons under Ollie. I don't know if that's backed up by the numbers, but it just feels that way to me, that we get to the ball first more often. And I think that's what gives you that additional security, because even if you screw up the first header, you would assume that our player is either heading it sideways, which is harder for them to score from, or out of the box, which is harder for them to score from. So just getting to the ball first, even if you don't control your header very well, ends up being a net positive for us. And I think that's probably been the biggest change so far.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else anyone wants to point out in terms of the Wolves game? I think everything's been covered. Man United v Newcastle is on Saturday. So, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Daniel, what are you positive for it?
Viva Ronaldo.
I feel like we could move on quickly from the back 5, essentially, including the goalkeeper. I don't think there's going to be a lot of disagreement between Shaw, Maguire, Varane, Wan-Bissaka, and De Gea. I feel like we can just move on from that. That's when the contentious issues start after that.
Agreed.
Do you think, Vin, that have that as a starting point, then we move on to the midfield?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the back 5 remains unchanged. Yeah.
The midfield, I'm not really sure, if I'm honest, because there's a lot of unknowns. So Fred might be banned. We know that the various Premier League clubs are trying to appeal that and get it changed. But as things stand, he's currently banned. I personally haven't seen what McTominay's fitness state is like. Is he going to be ready to start? I'm a little bit unsure on this one, so I might have to delegate the answer to somebody else.
So my thinking is we should be looking at Scott McTominay and Pogba if McTominay is fit. If not, then we have to go with Matic and Pogba, because Fred is suspended, and also because, honestly, Fred's started the season really poorly. Would you disagree with that?
No, definitely not. He's not started very well, and that is not very good for his confidence. So yeah, it's like you don't want to make the situation worse by throwing him in when he's not playing very well.
Go on, Reece.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting situation with Pogba because he has played a lot of games, and I've seen a lot of people say he might get rested, then start against young boys. So yeah, I'm not sure if he's going to play or not, but
I feel
I
like
think-
you want to rest Pogba against Young Boys, if anything, because Young Boys honestly is a Europa
Yeah.
level fixture.
Yeah, but then again, away from home, it's always going to be difficult. You want your best players. Maybe you could rest Pogba here and then rest a couple of others.
You know he's going to start Harry Maguire and
Boys.
Cristiano Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes against Young Boys, right? Like, we're not going to have issues with not having senior players available. I think that's probably where you give him the rest. Plus, the other thing is Fred's suspended, so and McTominay is potentially not fit. So are you going to play Matic and Van de Beek? Because honestly, that makes me a little bit nervous, just given Matic is immobile and Van de Beek probably, even though he's better at positioning, is going to want to maraud forward.
Look, I mean, I think Matic and Van de Beek might just work because this Newcastle team coming at Old Trafford, they're not going to have much of the ball. So it's going to be us on the ball pretty much all the time. And plus, even when they counter-attack, I don't think they have the fastest of players. I don't know if Joe Linton and Wilson, the only threat again,
Saint
like Wolves,
Maximin?
where they had Adama Traore, you have Saint Maximin. Right, that was the only one I was talking about. But I'm not sure if he's the quickest. I know he's very skillful, no doubt. But I'm not sure in terms of pace whether he's the quickest, as quick as Adama, for example. So
nobody's as quick as
on
Adama,
that
except for
front,
Daniel James.
Exactly, right? So, I mean, I think on that front, if we can somehow block Maximin out of the game, then I think Matic and Van de Beek might just work as a midfield.
I think we've had a bit of luck with the opponent. If it, like Vin was saying, we're playing against a team that sits back, who doesn't have much of the ball. I think we've had a bit of luck there. There are a lot of teams in the league where if we were playing them this weekend, we could be in a bit of trouble with our midfield options available. So yeah, I think we've had a bit of luck.
I will say I've had a second to think about this, and I think I might change my team slightly and go with Matic and Van de Beek. The reason for that is, let me just give you the reason for that real quick. I was looking at it and I was planning on going with Greenwood and Sancho on the wings, but I think there's an argument to go with Greenwood and Pogba on the wing and then save Sancho for midweek and play him with Donny Van de Beek against Young Boys because Sancho's more creative and Van de Beek's more the kind of Ramdeuter style number 10 who needs a creative player around him. So just from a squad management perspective, it might make sense to do it that way.
Yeah, that 100% makes sense. And as I think Daniel was saying, or maybe a couple of you mentioned it, Newcastle are the sort of team to sit back and they're not going to really press you and throw numbers at you. So I think Van de Beek and Matic with their really good ball progression, they might not be great defensively, but in terms of getting the ball forward, they're really good. So against Newcastle, especially, they'll be really good in terms of breaking them down.
So the three behind the striker, I'm going with Greenwood, Bruno, and Pogba. What do you guys think?
I quite like that idea because, like you said, it opens up Donny and Sancho playing midweek, and that is giving Donny the chance to play how he likes to, how it works for him. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you can't drop Mason in the form that he's in. I think he's undroppable at the moment. You could say the same for Pogba as well. Even though he didn't register a goal or assist against Wolves, but we could see that he seems to be in pretty good touch, and you just don't want to drop him off. I know he's played all three games for France during the break. But again, it'll be interesting to see whether he gets rested or not. But ideally, you want to play him now and then rest him for midweek against Young Boys. And then obviously, is there a debate for striker position? I think we have a couple of options to explore.
There's no debate. I mean, obviously, we're going to play Anthony Martial at striker. Why would you? Do we have somebody else? Any major goal scorers that I'm leaving out?
I was going to suggest Anthony Ilanka, but okay, you want to go with Martial, so be it.
I mean, we could learn from Jurgen Klopp. Remember when he played Steven Cocker as an emergency striker? Harry Maguire could play up top.
Yep.
No, but seriously, it's gonna be Ronaldo. It has to be Ronaldo. Hat trick on his debut, hopefully. Not much to say there.
Do you really think he starts?
I wasn't so sure he would before we found out when he was going to train.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just been like what, maybe. Okay, so one training session yesterday. I guess there's a couple of more before Saturday.
You'll have 4 training sessions with the team,
yeah.
which is more than Pogba or Bruno Fernandes will get, given they've been on international duty.
And he also had the 90 minutes against
yeah.
Ireland.
Ireland, right? Yeah. Yeah, I
Ronaldo
think
did say
Would be
he struggled a
interesting.
little bit with playing 90 minutes. I think he said he had a slight difficulty, and I think playing Premier League football, is he really going to play a whole 90? I don't know, but
He's not going to play the whole 90. My expectation would be he wants to play in the Champions League so he can keep that goal scoring record going. I would expect him to start both matches and maybe play 65, 70 minutes in both.
Agreed.
Yeah.
yeah. So hopefully we can kill the game off, and then
You bring on
off.
Cavani or someone.
Yeah.
Just imagine that. Cavani is our substitute striker now.
Oh man. Because I was thinking like Cavani starts and then say around the 55th or 60th, and then Ronaldo comes in and then scores a couple of goals just to like kill the game. You never know.
Yeah, fair enough. So let's move on to predictions. I'm going to go 4-0 United. I think Ronaldo's going to get 2. I don't know who else, but yeah. Vin, what do you think?
It's gonna be high scoring for sure. I'm gonna say 4-1. I think Saint Maximin will somehow get a goal in, but then we'll counter and then score 3 more.
I'm going to say 4-1 as well. I've got Ronaldo getting 2. I'll give 1 to Harry Maguire off a set piece. And, I think maybe Donny van de Beek, if he plays, might get a goal.
Go on, Dan.
I'll go 3-0 United with Ronaldo getting off the mark. I'm not sure how many he'll score, but I think he'll open his account for the club on his return.
Also, one thing to note, Newcastle United have given up a penalty in every match they've played this season. So it's incredibly likely, I would say, that we'll get a penalty. And if we do, I think no matter who the long-term penalty taker is, I think Bruno would give it to Ronaldo on his debut to score his first goal, even if Bruno was keeping pens. So that's something to keep an eye out for as well.
Yeah, so I think we'll end it there. That was fun. So if you watch on YouTube, then like and subscribe. If you're watching elsewhere, then give us a follow. Yeah, thanks.